Hello, everybody. Delve further. Episode. We don't. It's a running gag on the show that I don't know what episode it is because I can't count. Math so it's hard. But what isn't hard is downloading PUBG, and now I have probably, or at least my favorite caster. But I'm a little bit biased because I think we have a little bit of history. But Matrym comes from the Overwatch community way back when.
Many moons ago at this
Many
stage.
moons, yes. But we had run into each other, shared some friendly DMs, and I've always wanted to make content with him. And now he's doing big things, kind of leading the PUBG charge. And I snagged him for a quick little interview in between, doing his national, what is it, the NPL, the National PUBG League, is that right?
Yes,
Awesome.
because originally it was going to be like the what is it, North America PUBG League or something like that, but
Right.
it almost created like up. I think it was PAL or something was the original one that they
Oh
wanted to go with
no.
because there's Player Unknown's European League is one version of it, and it was going to be the
Mm.
Player Unknown's America League, and everybody was like, "We get to be the PALs," and they were like, "No, we're changing that shit
No.
real quick."
That's actually super funny that like people or companies kind of like make sure they think about like the branding to that level where it's like this probably would be the best title, but because it acronymizes into like this weird like pals or like some other um not necessarily insensitive, but you don't want anything too crazy. But it's good that at least companies think of that stuff. But how have you been, dude? It's been a long time since we've kind of crossed paths,
Good.
but you've been out there killing it.
Been really, really freaking busy to say the least. Well, I know a lot of people like to meme about PUBG Esports. Really, it's actually just the main subreddit for PUBG.
Mm,
But like, if you look at viewership across the board, like people actually really enjoy watching. I mean, I've been home. I think it was like we did some math from like June, or
mm,
actually it was like May until December. I was home 4 weekends
sure.
just because of the amount of travel and random things that were going on. It's been absolutely insane.
Now
But
it's weird because I think esports is like super kind of demanding in a weird way because it still kind of
mhm.
feels like the Wild West, and it's like, okay, if you're in and we kind of like bring you in, we need you like everywhere at all times. So like if and feel free if you don't want to kind of dive into this, but like I know that you're married and you have a child, like that's
two,
not too
two,
okay. I did not know that.
yeah.
Congratulations. Um, is that kind of taxing? Like, how does that go into your personal life at all? Is that bother you? Is it kind of stressing?
Um, it's weird because like
Mm.
for those of you guys that know me from the Overwatch scene, like you do naturally, I was a single parent for a very long period of time,
Ah,
and then I met somebody else that had a kid, got along great,
okay.
got married, so it's caused a lot of lifestyle changes to say the least. Like I
Mm.
was still working a full-time job in addition to casting up until the beginning of December.
Mm.
So it got to a point where my wife had to quit her job, but it's kind of nice for her, but she's never been used to not having a job, so
Sure.
she's kind of stir crazy. The bigger problem that we actually face is the leaving. Like whenever I have to
Mm.
go, like the kids, it hits you in the feels, you know
Yes.
what I mean?
No.
Because
Yeah. I
there's like
can't
all these little
imagine.
things that you miss. Like there was um, it's kind of a funny story because my daughter is 11, so she's moving into middle school and stuff like
Awesome.
that. And there was a father daughter, father son like
Mm.
breakfast at the school,
Sure.
and she was talking to her friends, and she's like, "Oh yeah, my dad can't do it because he does esports stuff and he has to travel a lot."
Oh.
And like everybody in her school just was like, how middle schoolers are, and they like
Yeah.
over exaggerate. They're like, "Oh no, that can't be true." And she was like, "No, look, here's a picture of your dad." So then I got home a day early actually on this event, and I went to go pick her up.
Uh,
And so I like drove up to the school, and she comes walking up, and you see like her friends or the people in her class back behind her. They like look over and then look back over at me, look who picks her up, and they kind of look to the side, and they're like,
that's
"Oh, it actually does do
awesome.
it." Because there's a lot of people in her age bracket that actually don't like Fortnite and like PUBG more. So kudos to the next
Really?
generation. You do have some taste.
Interesting. PUBG sneaking in like the what 11 to 15 demographic.
Yeah, mainly anything that's older than kids that want to floss. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
Beautiful, beautiful. Because
Taking
that was beautiful on the Times Square New Year's Eve. We're just trying to get everybody to floss.
Yeah, yeah, and
It
every
was
single Fortnite event. No, no harm against Fortnite. I actually
sure,
do
of
like
course,
Fortnite. I've
we
worked with
meme,
their
but
team, but I mean, it's kind of like that whole League of Legends Dota thing.
yes,
It's kind of
yes.
happened between Fortnite and PUBG. You just kind of have to like banter with each other back and forth a little bit.
Exactly. It's just friendly,
Mm.
no harm.
Yeah, no harm. I mean, I've only taken up a couple of pot shots to some of the casters back and forth. It's kind of
Sure.
fun though, you know.
Of course, of course. So, as we've kind of preluded to before at the start of the show, you obviously came from Overwatch, or at least you kind of had your
Mhm.
starts in Overwatch. Is that necessarily true, though? Like, were you following any other esports before that? Were you involved in any other scenes before Overwatch, at least to
Uh,
my
I
knowledge?
I actually got my start watching League of Legends,
Okay.
and that's kind of where I kind of came in from.
Mm,
And then I started trying to cast League of Legends, but naturally it's like Riot kind of controls everything over there. So did
yes.
some community cast and whatnot. Didn't necessarily let any of my friends know or any of that style of stuff.
Sure.
But really it was community building was what I first got active in because I didn't have
Mm,
time being a single parent.
sure.
And I went to school for video game programming, but I went to school on a theater and debate scholarship.
Mm,
So like the more I got involved inside of esports, everybody was like, Matt, you should start casting. You have like this voice for it. And I was like,
mm,
I don't know. We'll have to see. I always sucked at improv, so we'll have to see how this goes out. Then finally one day I just decided to start doing it. So do like helping out. Like I think one of our casters for one of the community events was sick, and I was like, sure. And then I got really into Overwatch while I was working on a couple of other games and got a chance to really work in the ground floor of helping build up a couple of those communities. And next thing you know, it's just like slowly and steadily built from there.
that's awesome. So we start in league, and that's the beauty of kind of esports is that everybody kind of it's cliche to say everybody starts somewhere, and it's
Hmm.
cool to see like the transition between games. And for a lot of people, myself included, those games tend to be shared, so we it's just another new top talking point that you can kind of talk to somebody with. It's like, okay, we like esports, what games do we like, or what
Well,
games do we share in common, that kind of thing.
what's really funny is like naturally I knew I wasn't experienced enough at that stage while I was doing the Overwatch stuff to ever
Sure.
have a chance at the Overwatch League.
Well, I wouldn't
I
say
needed to like
that.
do more lands and do all that other stuff.
Sure.
Well, I needed to cut my teeth more. You know what I mean? I would
Fair,
like
fair.
there's certain things that whenever you're looking at a league, it's just got to have you want to bring in people that have had a lot of experience.
Sure.
So that's whenever I decided to make the jump over to PUBG. What's
Mm.
really crazy is there was a lot of people that I used to cast inside of Overwatch that also made the transition around the same time. So like a lot of the signed players for PUBG, I actually cast in a lot of the amateur and beginning events inside of Overwatch as well. So the carryover is actually really large. Like as far as people like that may recognize, I've cast Winghaven in a ton of
Oh,
PUBG events.
really?
Yeah,
Wow.
he shows up and he's played in a lot of the streamer-based events. There was a lot of people that competed inside of like the academy stuff and
Mm.
the Cal League from way back in the day. They
Okay.
made their transition over, and a couple of those guys are like signed to well, they were signed to Optic. Brand going with Why Tempt Fate, which is just an awesome branding. They got like all the Chinese lettering and
Yeah, I
whatnot.
saw
They know
that.
they know that there's so many players in China that you want to make sure that you brand all your stuff to
Mm-hmm.
try to get that extra little bit of money from them. It's a smart play from that.
Yeah. I mean, that's been a we can maybe save that for another time, but China is a region I think is we're starting to see in esports really start to get developed.
Mhm.
And,
Oh,
and
without
that's
a
a
doubt.
big move, I think. But yeah, so you kind of touched on it there, but let's kind of explore that a little bit further. What really drew you to PUBG? Was it a game that you were playing at the time? Why transition over? What was the big draw there?
To be honest, I was just really enjoying playing it at the time.
Okay.
And this was back before there were any other battle royales, because I'm talking like
Yeah.
I was trying to get involved. I was involved before there were even custom lobbies.
Mm.
So I was trying to map it out, and I was working with a couple other people that I knew that did production stuff, and just trying to figure out how to properly produce an
Mm.
event like this. Because, like, as a prime example, just spectating
Mm.
is such a
I bet.
huge difference. I mean, like if you look at like Overwatch maps or CS:GO
Hmm.
maps, you have these paths that you can kind of look down. With PUBG, that doesn't happen. There's like
No.
kilometers that you have to cover. And so, in addition to trying to find like that right cosmetic angle, you have to get a feeling for how the teams work and find those right angles and try to make it look as pretty as possible. And it was just this really cool challenge to try to figure out at that stage because it was like kind of trailblazing. And it's been really interesting to see that progression and really see like spectators stepping up. Like I think that while casting is a big part of PUBG,
Hmm.
spectators make or break PUBG, and I want to say Fortnite to a degree, and all other battle royales because man, they have to be so on point all the time.
Now that I've noticed, or from what you just said there, something that I noticed, and maybe you can clarify a little bit more, is that during the NPL, which
Mhm.
is the North American side of like this big like push from I believe it's like Blue Hole Corp that is pushing this big initiative for PUBG Esports, for the North American side of things that is being kind of run by OGN. Um, each of the rounds, there's a focus on four teams. Now, I
Mhm.
haven't been too keen and paying attention, but do you only go back and forth between those four teams during spectating, or is there like some exceptions? Could you kind of dig
That's
in?
kind that's kind of the conversation topic right
Okay,
now.
okay.
Like the premise behind it is one of the hardest parts about battle royales is it's hard to care about certain teams, right?
Mm,
Because there's teams that are active at any given point. Like usually, like you're gonna have this team versus this team, and like just to make the Overwatch comparison,
sure.
like you have the content pieces where it shows them like practicing and talking to each other, and they have like the voiceover content. You can't run 16 of those every single time.
Right.
So just getting to know all the teams is kind of a problem. So OGN was like, all right, let's try to follow certain teams as much as we can. So we're trying to follow their story all the way through, which kind of creates certain problems at other times because not always are we following like the best teams, and that's going to annoy certain viewers, or naturally it's going to be like there'll be a big fight that's happening somewhere else, and none of these four teams that we're following are involved. So
Mm,
we're trying to figure out how to balance that, right? Like at what point do we step away from it? And that's a big conversation that everybody inside of OGN is having right now. And naturally, everybody's looking for feedback on that, and that's one of the reasons why at the start of every show we're like, hey, go to ognesports.com or go to Twitter and tell us, hey, you like it, or hey, maybe stop at this point. Everybody's just they want everybody involved in the conversation on how
sure.
to properly do it.
Interesting, interesting. And like we've kind of foreshadowed there. Again, this is OGN's big breakout into something that isn't a
Mhm.
MOBA, and obviously, rest in peace Overwatch. Um,
Their
and
first foothold in North America on
that's
top of
yeah.
that's the big thing. Like I don't know if you watch the thing, we're actually inside of like a full-on blown movie studio where
Mm-hmm.
they're like filming like the big stuff around us. So you'll like step outside and you'll see somebody in costume and you're like,
Oh,
is that Star Wars stuff going on over there? Like you have to like have these conversations with it. But I
sure.
mean, the venue is beautiful, and it's crazy to see them make that jump over towards North
Mm.
America for the first time because that's one of the things as a third-party producer, like naturally whenever it's just like a game is developing their own esports scene, that they tend to put a little bit more money into it to
Sure.
style, what they want. But having OGN be that third party production unit,
Mm.
that's something that I think North America's needed for a while.
And it's this is a legendary company that comes from years and years of doing, whether it's StarCraft 1, StarCraft 2, like
Hmm.
I mentioned, League, Overwatch, you name it, they've done it. Even titles that haven't even permeated over into the Western kind of pop culture phenomena, but it is a big deal that they're putting on, and they're putting out this much money into building a whole new studio that's absolutely gorgeous. And if you haven't seen it, please go take a look. And they're I think they're probably one of the best companies at integrating this like AI, this new kind of push for AR.
Yeah.
And just I don't want to gush about it too much, but talk to me about like this plane setup where it'll like come over and it'll show like how the plane flew. Like explain that to the listeners that might not be familiar with it.
All right, so they're actually pulling every single bit of packet data that they can. So the
Mm,
amount of information we have, we know distance traveled for players, we
really?
know how much damage they're doing, we know like their average time that they stay alive. But in addition to that, they're capable of making. They have this 3D render of the map that they can show, and whenever they bring it up, it has like the plane path that comes through, shows where it's at. They show where every single player lands inside of that, and then they can also track each player. So then they just find the team that won and also show the path on how they moved through the map and how they had to affect around circles. It's really cool. And I gotta tell you, I can't leak anything, but that's not even close to the amount of stuff that
Really?
they're gonna do. Like
Okay,
this is
you
just
got
them
me
starting to
hooked.
play around with it. They they got some crazy stuff coming down the line for once the actual season starts up.
Right, because this is something that I have to keep reminding myself. This is the preseason. It doesn't feel like a preseason. It's like this big studio, like I mentioned. Crazy LCD screens. You got some of the best teams, which I still kind of want to get into because I wonder why. that some teams kind of like drop their teams. I think you mentioned the team with the Chinese logo. I think
White
they
Temp
played,
Fate.
yes, Why Temp Fate. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they previously played for Dignitas?
Optic.
Optic, okay.
But Dignitas also did recently drop their team as well.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, could you talk about why teams are they hesitant? Like, why do you think that more people aren't kind of jumping in? Or do you think they'll jump in during the initial launch of the first season?
so let me awkwardly move in my seat here. Okay, so different teams have different rationales, and that's been one of the big
Okay.
things that's been kind of annoying. Is everybody tries to put like this blanket across it and say, "Oh, everybody just doesn't like PUBG esports." That's
Hmm.
not the case in the slightest form and fashion. There's a lot
Sure.
of other factors that are going into play. Like,
Hmm.
prime example, we're presently in the qualifiers to figure out who's actually going to be in the
Exactly.
actual pro season. There's a couple of teams that are kind of hesitant and they go, okay, we don't know if our teams are going to necessarily make it. So now is like the perfect time for us to kind of
Exactly.
sit back, wait
Mm-hmm.
and see who qualifies, and then pick up maybe one of those teams. That's happening on some cases. On
Okay.
other cases, it's just the organizations are just having financial difficulties at the
Of
time.
course, of course.
And so they're having to cut out a lot of their teams. Like, I mean,
I mean, Optic just had a big one
yeah, I
that
mean,
permeated a lot of different esports, so that one's kind of understandable. But yeah, I can totally understand, like, we don't want to invest in something that could just go away. Why don't we just pick somebody up that's already in?
well,
Seems
there's also
reasonable.
the other side of it is if you're familiar with the H1Z1 Pro League that was happening,
Kinda.
there were a lot of big promises that came inside that because naturally
Ah,
Battle Royale was kind of falling. Well,
yeah.
everybody knew that the PUBG League was going to be coming, so everybody
Okay.
was kind of looking at how all these other Battle Royale leagues might work, and there was a lot of false promises that came with the H1Z1 league.
Mm.
And naturally, it was just on Facebook. There was like some production issues. They had a lot of really weird uh, I guess, choices as far as their point systems
Good
went.
way to put it, I guess.
And yeah, I mean, their point system was really, really janky.
Huh.
And just because of the fact that that was like the first battle royale system, a lot of people are like, I don't know if I want to I want to sit back because we're actually running 3 splits. If you're familiar with League of Legends
Yeah.
systems, there's going to be 3 splits in season 1. But naturally, OGN isn't necessary. No, it's OGN that's producing it. So you got to have a little bit of faith. Additionally, a lot of people have kind of looked at the North American and European numbers on viewership and been like, oh, I don't know if I like this too much and how well is it going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But Korea and China and specifically everything in Asia, like
Yeah.
India is freaking huge on PUBG
Really?
Mobile right now. And they could just like they have their own systems and you can almost sustain all of PUBG esports just based off of their viewership alone, which is why if you look at what we're doing in North America, it's actually
Mm-hmm.
broadcast on everything. So that way it can get pushed. I think that at some point it's going to be pushed to near on every single point that OGN can potentially push to.
Wow. And that transitions into another point I wanted to talk about.
Mhm.
Doing kind of a search just for some interesting research topics. You actually did an event in India, so kind
Yeah.
of run that down for me. What was that like? What was PUBG Mobile India? Wrap that up for me.
All right. This is probably one of the most fun stories I've
Okay,
had as
beautiful.
far as esports goes. All right. So we'll get started with we get asked to do this for a PUBG Mobile, but PUBG Mobile, PUBG, they're essentially the same game. Just
Hmm.
one's produced by Tencent, one's produced by PUBG Corp. They're exact same maps, same play style, blah 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 blah
Sure.
blah. So naturally they pick up PUBG casters. So we're getting ready to go, and everybody forgot the fact that you need to get a visa
Oh
to go
no.
into India. So we're sitting here, we're supposed to fly out and
Hmm.
then have a day of rehearsal, and suddenly they're like, nope, hold on, we got to get you guys visas. So we have to do these last minute visas,
Oh no.
get that situated. The flight from India, where because I usually am Dallas, it was DFW to Chicago to Qatar to Bengaluru, and so it was 27 hours, I believe 26 or 27 hours of just being
Ow.
on flights, and there was like an hour layover somewhere in the middle of that. So we do this, we land at 2 a.m. India time, have to hop on a Uber, an Indian Uber. So we're riding around, and they got like tuk tuks flying by us down. You can't say interstates because they don't really have them.
Sure.
Get to the hotel, get check in at 4 a.m. Then we have to be back up at the venue at 9 a.m. to start rehearsals because we missed that the day beforehand. Then go into the show, cast for 8 hours, turn around and go back, and then go back to our hotels, and then get back to the airplane that's supposed to be leaving at 1 a.m. So we spent out of the 72 hours, it was something crazy like 52 hours on plane, 10 hours casting, and like 3 hours in rehearsal. It was just
Whoa.
like the biggest whirlwind, like go 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 event I've ever done. But that being said, the Indian group was absolutely insane. Just to give you an idea on whenever we talk about this,
Sure.
there were over 100,000 people that applied to play in this event, and
Really?
only college students could play in it. So that just
Wow.
gives you an idea on how big this thing was in India. Like they're
Jeez.
chomping at the bit to have more esports over there. They really, really like it.
So as you're saying, we were big whirlwind of Indian esports, 100,000 people signing up, and only college students can compete.
Right. And so
That's crazy to me.
it's pretty insane, all things considered. Like, there was a period of time where they were saying there were some stats coming out, and I was looking over stuff that PUBG Mobile was actually the highest grossing game for a period of time, actually beating out Fortnite, and that was just the PUBG Mobile side of it. But just because of the fact of how big it is in Asia.
Wow, and again, that's we talked about this, I think, just a little bit before the show, just how much power is in China and Asia specifically, and you're kind of starting to see that with Fortnite pushing into Korea. For whatever reason, they brought over Chris Pratt. I guess he fits, just to sell some eyeballs, and that's really cool to see. This global push for kind of FPS and just esports in general, and trying to push into those Asian markets. But to kind of move into the topic at hand, we have the NPL, and I've got some questions for the man, hopefully with the answers.
Go with it. I'm ready to go.
Day one, I had seen a pretty crazy clip from Sharpshot from Wildcard Gaming, or this guy on Miramar, which is the desert map for those of you who aren't familiar with the name. Sometimes we just call it the desert map, the forest map. At least my friend group did that. We didn't, kind of harp on the names, which I know is fairly important in PUBG esports. But he had
I got
pretty.
a couple of friends that do that too.
Okay, so it's not just us.
Yeah.
But this guy had a absolutely bonkers clip. Like, is this normal? Is this something we see a lot? Like, he if I remember correctly, he was defending a res from two separate teams pinching him on like the side of a mountain.
Yeah, they were trying to make their way up the side of the mountain, and so they were trying to block line of sight. But they had two different teams approach them from both angles. They were already down to 3 people. Then, as they were going for the peaks back and forth, you could see the fact that they realized that there were the other 2 teams that were around Wildcard realized the fact that they could push in for the fight, and they started to make their way through. They got down onto one of Sharpshot's teammates. So with this, Sharpshot just starts spinning left and right repeatedly. He has the sniper rifle, and he just like hits a shot, gets it down onto somebody, looks back over this way, takes a couple of shots, gets it down on that side, and he was just cycling back and forth while the res was going off back behind. He managed to buy enough time for his teammate to get res and also get meds off and also get fully back up to health, which usually takes about 40 seconds. It was him holding off this angle, and it was absolutely insane. I mean, he was just destroying 2 different teams, and then forcing them back away to the point where they should have got him. I mean, it was essentially 3 versus 8 at that point.
Jeez.
And he did such a good job damaging them out. They forced them away. Now, how common is this? I would say that that style of clip happens at least once per day inside of PUBG.
Really? Wow.
That's one of the great things about it is since there's so many people playing, there's always this crazy moment that ends up happening. Like if you saw that, then there's also another clip of where Tempo Storm is playing. They came across Shoot to Kill, which is the ex Dignitas team.
Sure.
And Shoot to Kill just tore them apart, burned them through all of their down them. I think it was something crazy like 4 or 5 times.
Wow.
Made them burn through all of their meds. Then they had to move up to a hillside, and they had no armor, no helmets left. They had no more meds, so the only way that they were surviving is they would go for a peek, and there was another teammate back behind them. If they got hit, it was just enough to get down, regardless of the bullet. The other person would run up and start trying to res them. Somehow, they managed to survive their way through this, get into the top 10, and it just becomes, you see it like it's just these 4 guys with no health fighting against so many other players to the point where they get in this clutch 1v1 by somehow managing to survive. And one of the players is actually having to run up and use one of his teammates that has been downed as a human shield and spiral over his back to get the win. It's just like ridiculous, some of the things these guys come up with.
I think, and this is this isn't something that necessarily surprises me because it is like it is such a wildly variance based game. Well, I wouldn't say variance based because I think that has not negative connotations, but there is so many different variables going around. Like the maps are just kind of like left kind of up to a sandbox to the players. Like I think last night there was a part on, I think it was Erangel, the kind of foresty map, where there's like the bunker area, and somebody like had retreated into there. One team had retreated into there, and the other team was like, okay, fine, you want to go in there? We're gonna park cars outside of the tunnel so you can't escape without us knowing because you have to get in the car. And it's just like, that's really smart. And I'm seeing like people drive like motorcycles into like the apartments and close, and I'm like, that's really smart too. I'm like, man, these pros just can't fathom, like, it's just super smart, and it's super cool to see that. Like it's a fun experience. It's, you know, not only is it competitive because, you know, to kind of touch on that sharpshooter clip, I do want to kind of return to that because you guys had mentioned that talking to some of the players, they would rather, and correct me if I'm misquoting you, from what I remember, the quote was, they would rather have 4 players alive and have a poor position than have a strong position with like a lesser amount of players. I think that almost, go ahead.
I was gonna say that kind of depends on the team style.
Okay,
like some teams they'll be more brazen with it. Like a prime example is E United or Cloud9. They'll just fight. They don't care. They'll just if they think that they see somebody, they'll just go third party it, and they have no qualms inside of that. Sorry, I've got a train next to my
You're
hotel.
good. No worries.
So other teams tend to like to play very safe.
Sure.
And so there's this, naturally, the more people you have alive at the late game increases your chances of, if something goes wrong,
right,
you can change a rotation or get the res off or something like that. So some teams will always play for survival. Other teams will play for position, and if they'll try to go to the center of the map because you have a higher mathematical likelihood of actually having a circle drop onto you based off of geometry and all this math. Because trust me, these players, like, everybody's like, oh, but like battle royales are too like RNG. These guys like do math on every single circle and every single circle size to figure out the best spots to try to get into to have the best mathematical % chance of going to, and then pick locations that can rotate to the spots that if it doesn't come to them, they can easily move to without taking too much fire. Like, these guys know the maps, know the math. It's ridiculously crazy. So they balance the RNG. That's why we see repeat winners so much inside of PUBG. But yeah, it all just kind of comes down to style. Like, some guys will loot very minimal, run into the circle, get that good spot so that way they can rotate safer. Other guys will loot forever, play on edge, not really, but that forces them to take a lot of fights, and then they'll make their way inside the safe. Other teams will just not shoot at all. They'll just like hide the whole game and then try to survive and go based off of placement points. But usually those teams don't do so well. Sooner or later, it's just like every game, you got to make people start reacting to you.
Exactly. And that was another kind of question, you know, because you followed it a lot more in depth than I have, and, you know, I have all these questions, and it's been super interesting, at least following it for the last bit, and I probably might tune in every once in a while. This is some fun stuff. Have you noticed like a preferred style for pro players? Do they tend to be more frag heavy? Is that like conducive of like higher placings? Is playing a little more passive, focusing on rotations? Is that maybe a little bit more preferred? What's your kind of take on that?
Well, okay. So the best way to end up in the first place spot in any PUBG event is consistency. So if you feel like you can just absolutely murder the world and get repeat performances towards the top, that's great. Other teams, they'll either go for first or they just don't even care. So they'll play really, really aggressive. So like a prime example is Cloud9.
Sure.
Cloud9 had a phenomenal day one, right? They were just killing everybody, had these huge kill count games, but then they even made the comment, the fact that we're so confident that we're going to make the NPL, we're just here to put on a show. So they were doing stuff like driving people in buggies and trying to like driving, like whenever you're driving the buggy, you can switch to the back of it and like shoot out of it. So you saw like players that were just trying to like Cloud9 players that were driving by other people and just doing the seat switch and trying to get the shots off on it just to get like cool clips, which respect worthy. But then on the second day that they played, that kind of backfired for them. They still got some really high placements, but they also got some really low placements. So whenever you play really aggressive, there's that risk that if it goes wrong, you have to play. You have to know place. It's going
Right.
to make up for that one bad round, and the good teams can accomplish that. The tier right below them usually tends to wait till about like circle 5 to get a little bit more aggressive once a couple of teams are already damaged, and then try to use that point to capitalize.
Something that kind of didn't dawn on me, which, you know, I've played a good amount of PUBG just super casually with my friends, may or may not partake in some adult beverages there, but
It's a way to play PUBG.
It's a fun one. It's definitely a fun way, you know. We'll have to maybe partake in that sometime. Maybe you can teach me a thing or two. But third partying is a concept and is a term that made a lot of sense hearing about it specifically last night. I think there was one guy, like, I think just kind of alone in, I want to say top 10, and the desk had brought up, like, you know, he can't shoot because everybody will know where he's at.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something, how do I want to frame this? Is that something that, how do you think players necessarily weigh that? You know, do you think that they kind of weigh that on a case by case basis, or is it like, okay, we really want to take that compound, so like no matter what, no matter the loot, the gear, whatever, we're just gonna like try to force because we know that if we control this position, we're gonna be able to fight in? Is that something that like goes into the strategy? Because it sounds like from what you're mentioning before, a lot of the strategy is like planning a route, not necessarily like executing on specific points, not like Counter-Strike, for example. It's more of like mapping a route out on where you want to be.
Well, one of the things I like to talk about on Cast a lot is how PUBG is actually a decision-based game more than anything else. Like, being able to hit your shots is big and important, but I mean, a lot of good players can hit their shots.
Sure.
So you have to have, like, a lot of what you're talking about tends to be very circumstantial. Like, if you're still got 4 people up and you want to take a place, you go take the place. If you're solo out, sometimes you can kind of mind game and strategize around it. So like sometimes you'll see a snake that has a team that's in front of them, and somehow he's managed to hide from them, and the new circle pops. They'll need to push in front of him, so he'll slowly creep up back behind them, let them do all the fights. And once you see one of them get down, once he sees one of them get down, he'll pop up and try to wipe the rest of the squad and get himself a better placement and let them take all the risk for it. But on another side of that, you'll see sometimes that somebody's trying to be too passive and wait for it, and they're just hiding inside of a bush while there's a 4-man squad running by, and they just go, "Why are you hiding in this bush?" and spray him down. There is a certain amount of knowledge and understanding the map and where you want to go, kind of like what you were talking about. But it comes down to, in this situation, what do I want to accomplish, and what can I potentially accomplish? You have to have, in PUBG as a competitor, you have to be aware of where your skill set lies. So like, if you're one of the great killers inside of PUBG and you by yourself, you might take the 1v3. I mean, we've seen it happen a couple of times this week so far, where somebody just waits for that last moment and can actually 1v3 their way out of the situation if they're good enough. And they know you have to have an idea on how people are going to push over and how they're going to move around the map. So they'll do that. But if you're like one of the support players whose job in life is just to kind of like gather information, usually whenever we say support, it's a lot more of like scouting, looking around, getting an idea of what's going on, making sure to watch everybody's flank whenever they're in the process of taking shots at everybody. It's a lot more higher pressure of a situation that seems like whenever you say support, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And so if you're one of the support players, you know that you might be a little bit more passive and kind of just like let other people move around you and see what you can do to capitalize whenever the opportunity arises. So again, with so many teams in PUBG, different styles. I know I keep saying that, but there's so many different styles and so many different personalities. It's really interesting. Like, you remember there was that period of time in Overwatch when they started talking about the colors of the teams or whatever?
Of course.
That's a big factor inside of PUBG, because you can end up with 2 teams that don't ever like to shoot at each other sitting right next to each other, and slowly having to, like, they'll like walk out and go, "Oh, we see each other," and then like shift away from each other. But then you'll see 2 other teams that are very aggressive, that walk up and they'll just see each other. It's like, it's time to fight, and we'll charge, you know?
No, 100%. And that's the kind of, I think you've kind of wrapped it up really nicely for me there. It's like, yes, OGN's putting on a fantastically beautiful, you know, performance piece. The stage looks great, but it's the ability for these players to kind of inject their personality and their own style into the game, and it is so even across the boards, you will get a team. And again, I don't want to speak out of school here, so if I say anything off kilter, please correct me if I'm wrong. But you have a team like United, right? From my understanding, they're a little aggro, right? They go out for these kills. They're a big kill team. And that's really, really cool to me. That's really cool to see a team like them contrast a more passive team, that's kind of laying back. They're a little bit more rotational focused. And versus, even a theory crafted concept of just 4 people, not necessarily a team of 4, just like 4 solos that just kind of you drop in different, like there's all these possibilities for this game. And I think that's what's really cool about it. It's aim focused. There has strategy. There is a kind of a leave it up to chance element, which is, entertaining for some people, but it is a blast to watch. I do have to say, and you guys are putting on one hell of a show.
Thank you. And now it's just a matter of fact of can my voice last the next 4 days that we've got going through this? It's because it's already getting to that stage. It's a little rough. You can see I've got like the water and the orange juice and the allergy medicine over there.
I feel you on that.
The games have been pretty lit, so it's been killing my voice being the play-by-play guy.
Now today, obviously, as we're recording this is pre-call time for Matrym, so he's got a show to do today as well. Going into today, do we have any predictions? Anybody? Because I think Group B, a group that hasn't necessarily seen a lot of playtime, plays today and tomorrow. So I think you guys were talking about why tempt fate, why they're so low. It's because they haven't played yet. So like, are they somebody to look out for? This is kind of a selfish question because I kind of want to know so I can be like a little bit ahead on the game here. But what's your thoughts?
I mean, why tempt fate is definitely one of the teams to watch. I mean, hands down, they almost all. But we have 16 of the teams that have already played 2 days. So with that being said, why tempt fate, I think, is still, they're like somewhere around 17th or 18th at the direct time.
Okay.
And they've played half the amount of games as other players have. So that should kind of give you an idea on what's going on. Also, Simplicity has only played 1 day, and they're presently in, I believe, 2nd place.
Wow.
So there's a couple of these teams that we're going to be watching today, without a doubt, that are going to be very, very. I mean, Simplicity was the first team to actually get 2 wins. I believe, because Smoking Aces has done it as well, and I believe United has done it. So if you look at the fact that we've already had 12 games, and we've had 3 repeat team winnings, so it's already 6. Half the games have already been repeat winners. That's one of the things I get really annoyed whenever people are like, "Oh, PUBG is so RNG." Like, no, it's not really. Just good teams can do this. But those would probably be my 2 big ones to keep an eye on.
Okay.
A personal favorite of mine that I just really like to watch is going to be Halo Clan Gaming. They've got Machine Gunner in it, and he's just a really great guy. He's kind of like the heart and soul of the player community. He's one of those type of people that everybody just really, really likes.
Sure.
At the PGI North American qualifier, he just put together a team and he was playing through it, and it was very like last minute kind of situation, right?
Sure.
So they come up and they have like white shirts on where he'd gotten his fiance to like write a logo on the side of it, Sharpie, and like done all this other stuff. And they also went in. You know how they listen to comms sometimes. They were just in there at one point, like singing Vanessa Carlton songs and just goofing off while they were playing through a qualifier for a Worlds event. These guys are just really fun, for lack of a better term. Like, it's really crazy because they were sitting there, they were doing this, and we're all listening into their comms, and they're singing Vanessa Carlton, and all of a sudden they get to the end of it, and Gunner's like, well, fuck. Everybody else is probably having really good comms and doing call-outs in a row, but you're singing like dumbasses. No wonder we're not going to be qualifying for Berlin. And they actually ended up winning that round, and it was crazy because when they did, like, all of the players got up and clapped for them, just because of the fact that everybody was doing so much. But he actually took some time off, and now is back inside the scene, rebuilt another team like 4 days beforehand, and they're actually doing really well. I believe that they're in the top 16 and potentially going to qualify for the MPL at this stage. They're playing today as well with a player named Back, who is just he did like it's spelled Bakk, but it's kind of funny. He plays so well, you almost think that he's going to end up getting a back ban on Steam,
right?
But he is just ridiculously good.
All right, I'm
Plus,
gonna have
they
to keep
bought.
my eyes out.
They gave me a jersey.
Oh, okay. Well, slightly
That
biased.
was helpful. Yeah.
That's fair. And
Um,
you mentioned Simplicity, which, correct me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
is a team that had to qualify to play here. Now,
Correct.
this is a kind of invite slash qualification based preseason. So is it kind of surprising that some of these, this teams in particular, are these names that, we should know? Or is it kind of a surprise? Is it kind of like an underdog story, seeing them kind of really surge up?
Simplicity was a lot of people's like going into it. They were expecting dark horse style position to make it in the NPL.
Okay.
They were just like, okay, hey, we expect you guys to get like somewhere between that 12th, like I'd say somewhere between like 5th and 12th. Nobody knew where they were really going to fall.
Sure.
But that being said, everybody knew that they were a good team. It's kind of like there's a couple of teams that played through their way through the qualifiers that are very good, and so we knew that they were going to be good. Naturally, the guys that tend to play through qualifiers in PUBG, we also tend to be a little bit more hungry for it whenever they get to the main stage.
Okay.
A couple of the invited teams were selected based off of things like making it to PGI Berlin, the
Sure.
World event, different things along those lines. And so it's not surprising that some of the teams that have had to do a lot of roster swaps, like a prime example, Team Gates is here and they qualified due to that reason. They got invited due to that reason, but they don't even have the same roster that they had back whenever they were at Berlin. So it's not surprising that some of the qualified teams are actually doing better than some of the invited teams.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. It is, it's still got a little bit of that esports, shenanigans to it at times. You get the invited team. Sometimes the teams end up falling apart. So you kind of did invite them, but the team had its problems and had to change. So
yeah.
What were you gonna say?
Oh no, I was just gonna say it's I often really enjoy. Hold on, I think I've got my vibrate on my phone. So let me turn that down.
You're good.
Can I do it? There we go. Now it's not gonna vibrate every single time. Well, I say that now. It's just
I'll just.
I'm just gonna put the phone back down. So what I was going to say is that there's definitely going to be several teams inside the people that ran through the qualifier making it to preseason that are going to 100% blow it out of the water and going to do so well that they're probably going to get signed off of stuff.
Wow.
And that's kind of one of the things in North America that we've been kind of waiting for, is to have a chance to see some of these teams really get a chance to show themselves, because there was a period of time where everything was kind of invite only, whenever it got into some of the lands. So it's nice to see people that have that opportunity and in a logical strategy. You know what I mean? Everybody's had their chance to play. Like there was something along the lines like you got 12 rounds to go through this round, and like there were a certain amount of rounds that you could play through every day to make your way through. And that's going to be a reoccurring theme inside of this. It's going to be like the old school LCS style with the PUBG League, to where new faces and new teams are always going to have a chance to make their way pro league.
Okay.
Every single split, and each split's only like 3 months. So I really like that.
So
it keeps everybody on their toes and innovating.
People are kind of churned if they're not, up to snuff, that they will kind of be relegated down. And of course, in that same fashion, you can always make your way back. So in a sense, I kind of like that. You still have the impact of, last place. Like it's not good really at all for anybody to be last place, but it still gives the org some kind of fallback that, like, yeah, if you make the right changes, there is a quick turnaround. You can kind of jump back if you choose to kind of keep your team afloat, I should say, which is cool.
And that's kind of one of the other reasons we were talking about the org stuff earlier.
Yeah.
We've kind of moved out of that world of relegations. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody gets their spot, and then regardless, they have the safety of having a team in that location. Like we've seen League make that switch over. Naturally, Overwatch has a similar system. I think that was probably also one of the hesitancy points coming through whenever everybody talks about like how RNG battle royales are, and then now there's like this relegation system. I think that did scare a couple of orgs, but once they start seeing the stability that some of these teams can provide, I think that they'll be.
That's good. That's good, because this is an esport that I think has a lot of legs to stand on. I think, like we've mentioned previously, like you've mentioned previously, it's wildly popular in the East. All I can hear, just kind of speaking to some of the Chinese members, in the Overwatch community. PUBG's real big out there, and I think you could probably add some anecdotes there as well. Like, have you heard any fun little tidbits coming from China? Like any strange numbers that you just kind of like had to raise an eyebrow at?
Well, I mean, naturally there are some. Whenever you talk about Chinese numbers, they're always hard to measure exactly, right?
Sure.
So, but I mean, there's a lot of very interesting stuff happening inside the Chinese scene, without a doubt. There's been a couple of really weird moments where like like China's throwing out statements like, we don't like how battle royales promote like mindsets and ideals that are not similar to the Chinese national view, but then nothing's ever going to really happen with those. Like it's like one of those things that pops up on Reddit and everybody's just like, oh my god,
no.
Fortnite PUBG, you're not going to be able to be played now. And then it goes away like 2 seconds later.
Right.
But the Chinese scene is going to be huge, because that's the whole thing. Is like, naturally we're starting the NPL over here. Talked about the PEL.
Right.
There's going to be, I think, something along the lines of, oh my gosh, I'm gonna quote this wrong, but I think it's 8 different major regions.
Wow.
And there's going to be a ton of minor regions. So naturally we've got China, Korea, Europe, North America, South America. I think that there's a Middle East, and then there's like a oceanic region.
Really?
So like it's going to be a worldwide style stuff. So whenever we move into actual worlds, we're going to have all of the winners from these regions compiling together, which is going to be really cool.
Beautiful. I love like Worlds. You know, I don't follow League too much anymore. I probably will have to start doing so now. But Worlds is always something you know, even if you're not a League fan, and you're a fan of another esport, you gotta at least check it out. Tune in for a couple maps, pick a team, follow them throughout their run. Like, it is just kind of like a big phenomena. Like in TI, I know some people, like, I'm not a fan of Dota. I don't play it. It's hard for me to kind of even figure out what's going on, but you gotta watch it. You know, it is such a big push, and you know, I hope that PUBG Worlds, you know, that can be another one of those things that we as just an overall esports community can just gravitate towards and be like, cool, like this is another fun event that we can just have on our calendars to watch or to support or visit. You know, it's really cool.
If you look at the spectacle that OGN is already bringing,
right?
About like all the reality stuff that they're doing, the venue that they have. And then you look back to PGI Berlin. That was a ridiculous event.
That was
like,
crazy.
People that were doing, like, if you remember, there was like those actors coming out like with the guns, and they were rappelling down from the ceiling and they had like orchestras play. It's going to be a thing, without a doubt. Now, how it's going to look this time around, I have no idea, but I'm already excited about it just after seeing how the last Worlds event was.
It's fun as fun can get. Just kind of entrenching, starting to, you know, lightly dabble into another kind of, I don't know if I would say budding, but an esport that's really starting to really kick up the gears. Like, would you say that this is the kind of event horizon that PUBG's facing in the same way that Overwatch had to get the Overwatch League, or like League got the LCS era? Is this kind of the PUBG League era for PUBG, would you say?
I think that with OGN's backing and the amount of production value that they're bringing into it, as well as what's going to be happening in Europe, Korea, China, I think that it's going to be on an uptick without a doubt. The biggest problem that I think that PUBG faced is the hashtag esports ready meme that happened like a year ago or so.
Yeah. You
know, once that mindset kind of entrenches, people just go, oh, there's no way for this to happen.
Right.
And then
you
naturally
win them back.
There's been 2 specific things that have kind of happened that caused some battle royale. Like, people have a bad idea about battle royales in general.
Sure.
She's had a couple of poorly run events with poor spectating that makes just a struggle to watch. H1Z1 League was problematic. We talked about that.
True.
And then Fortnite has that very loose esports system, you know, and then they've got like their planes flying around, and then they bring out like these boom boxes and all this crazy stuff where like the day of an event. So it's kind of created this issue where people think that there's certain factors that go into battle royale esports that aren't actually there if you start actually watching enough. Like I've been joking about the 2 RNG meme.
Yeah.
You can talk to most people, and even most like Fortnite and PUBG streamers, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's just so RNG." It's like just really hard to win repeatedly. But then if you go and actually start watching PUBG official events,
Yes.
again, you see repeat winners happen a lot because they understand how to make all the RNG stuff work towards their favor, or how to adapt to it based off of good decision making.
Another thing that, you know, to kind of wrap up, because again, I don't want to burn your voice out too much longer, and I know that you have a meeting at some point to get to, so I don't want to, you know, tell me whenever, you know, time's up. But somebody kind of posed this to me recently in the Overwatch community, and I thought it was really interesting that Battle Royales is a lot like poker, where it is about the most efficient play possible. Would you say that's kind of accurate?
Oh, without a doubt. There's a ton of, like, the comparisons to poker happens a lot.
Oh, okay.
Mainly because there's a lot of stuff like okay, as a prime example, at the start of the game, sometimes you'll have a player that'll go and scout a building that they think is strong, and it'll only be one player there, and then like a group of cars will step up, and that one guy will just start spraying at all of the cars, trying to make it seem like there's four people there. So he's kind of like bluffing his position, like, don't come here and fight me because there's too many of you, you're gonna die. But it's exactly like what you're talking about. That goes back to that decision-making process that kind of establishes how PUBG is played. Is sometimes you do get dealt a bad hand, and how do you adapt to that? Like, are you going to try to bluff it? Or are you going to try to play it? Do you think that you can mind game your way out of the other people and still somehow manage to come up with a win? And it happens. Like, really good teams can take a hard circle shift away from them and go, all right, this is the way we're going to approach it, and they come in with a good plan. Like, a lot of these guys study military strategy because it actually really applies.
I guess it would make a lot of sense. Yeah.
You have to know terrain. You have to know breaching. You have to know how to handle these different angles. It's really cool to see how it plays out. And the guys that really do their homework and really learn how to use the terrain in the map and good communication can just overcome almost insurmountable odds. It's just crazy to see.
You're selling me, Matrym. You're selling me, dude. I don't know. I might have to step in. Like, this is really, really cool. I'm having a blast watching NPL, and you guys are absolutely killing it. You know, last thing, you know, the Overwatch community, even the League of Legends community, we lament the passing of OGN. You know, from the greener grass. Could you tell us what's it like? What's it like working with OGN?
All right.
As much as you can.
This might make it hard to get other gigs, but 100% tell you that it is the best organization that I have worked with, and that's no like smoke up anybody's ass. It's just there's naturally, since we do have a lot of Korean people that are coming down, sometimes you do have a little bit of a language barrier because you're like, hey, you know, I kind of want to have like the map at this stage, and so you have to tell a translator that then talks to the director that then relays it back over the spectator. So, you know, there's like this process to go through. But as far as how they treat all the players, it's amazing. The way that they've come through and tried to figure out how to take care of the problems that PUBG faces, because like naturally there is a slower part of the game at the start. So they're trying to figure out ways to solve that. They're trying to like make the analyst desk as exciting as possible. They're always thinking of new ideas and trying to make sure to push it as far as they can while treating everybody with the utmost respect and making sure to take care of everybody. You know what I mean? And that's like I said, I was talking about, just I had a cough and they just bring me like, here's some green tea. Or as a prime example, we'll get done with the cast and like we'll get done, I think it's about 10:40 here. So sometimes the town misses dinner. And so whenever we get done, suddenly there's just people that show up and it's like, hey, we know it's after dinner time, but we went ahead and sent somebody else to get food. So here's you guys something to take back to the hotel. You know, it's all these little touches on how they just try to take care of everybody around them and let them know that they're invested in everybody's success. That just feels really good to work with.
It just sounds really cool. Like, I want somebody to bring me food. That's amazing. Like, even with
I make it sound like, oh, they're just giving me all these things, so I love them. It's even just listening to feedback. There's just so many things to list. It's just they think of everything. You know what I mean? It's just really nice.
And it's a really fine touch to kind of hear behind the scenes, because, you know, as esports fans, we see what OGN can do in front of the screen, but behind the scenes, you hear that they're, you know, really tentative on taking care of their talent. They're tentative on taking care of the players. Like, they're open to feedback. Like, this is this is what, you know, people are like kind of are rooting for.
I got a great story that doesn't even pertain to me that'll
Okay.
let you know how OG is, right? So I worked the OSM event, which was their launch. It was like a streamer launchy style event for their new arena.
Sure.
Apparently somebody in the back had been chewing gum and actually just spit it out on the floor in front of the seating area. Why? I don't know. But like me and another one of the casters, Porosaurus, we saw this and we were like, oh, hey, we need something to clean. The CEO of OGM was there, sees what we're talking about, and runs over and starts trying to pick it up with his fingernails, like he's like prying it up that's been dried on there. And like we're coming over with like napkins and things to scrape it off, and he's like, no. This is my venue. I want to make. I'll take care of it. Thank you for noticing it, kind of situation. These guys are just like they just care so much, and they just want to do a great job. And it's like all the way at the top of the organization, all the way down.
That's like it's such a sweetheart story. Like I hope PUBG just does well for them. I hope it does well for you guys. Like you can't help but enjoy. Like, it's such a heartwarming story from just like a longtime esports fan, and even people that are kind of new. You know, they fell in love with the Apex, and they fell in love with, you know, LCK and Champions or whatever, and they know OGN, and to hear that kind of stuff is I think it's going to be really cool for people. But, you know, again, don't want to take up too much more of your time. You know, let the people know what's going on with you, where can they find you, and when can they tune into NPL?
NPL right now is every day at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Sorry, I'm used to being in Central time zone, so I have to think that one. It's actually on Facebook. It's on YouTube under OGN Esports. It's under Twitch under OGN Esports and Play Battlegrounds. And it's on like 6 other things, and I don't know all the tags just off the top of my head. But pretty much, if there's a streaming platform you want to watch it on, just try to find OGN or a Battleground stream, and it'll be on there.
Awesome. And you know, again, I have your Twitter linked below, but you know, if there's anybody else you want to kind of give a shout out to, or you know, the last little bit's yours, whatever you want to say.
All the other casters, 100% hands down, they're working on the OGN stuff right now with NPL. Give them some love. We're actually trying new stuff. Like if you notice, we're doing the Korean style TriCast. It's a little bit different. So trying to bring that over. And so the other 2 casters I work with, RuPaul, and Mike/Porosaurus NA, which also did some Overwatch casting back in the day. You might remember them.
I do.
They've both been working on that with me, and actually Toffee's Cam on the analyst desk, and Seltzer Please we've got as the analyst.
You can't not
you don't know who
her.
Seltzer is, you're wrong. Yeah, I mean, if you don't know who Seltzer is, you're wrong. So it's just a really crazy good crew to work with. Like we come back and we start joking about anime and like sci-fi movies and all this other shit. So please make sure you guys give them some love as well.
Awesome. And again, you know, follow everybody down below. I'll try to find everybody's Twitter and I'll link them down. They definitely deserve all the love and adoration as that you can give them. But yeah, this has been I think episode 6 or 7 of Delve Further. We'll break a kayfabe here and ruin the joke. But until next time, guys, you know, take care and go watch some PUBG.